So in Bimini, we designed multiple captive tests, just like the novel object test that you've seen at the beginning of this video. We had two that were particularly successful. The first one is called the novel open field test, where one shark was put into an enclosure it had never seen before, and we monitored its exploration behavior. How was the shark exploring this brand new environment? And so this I'm going to call exploration for the rest of the video. The second test was a sociability test where 6 sharks were put together in an enclosure, and we looked at how social they were towards one another. And we found out that some sharks are more social than others. And that's going to be the sociability personality trait. In addition to those 2 tests, we monitored the sharks in the wild thanks to our Sonotronics acoustic telemetry system, which allowed us to know where the sharks were, what habitats they were using in the wild. And we also did, of course, our yearly PIT, mark recapture project, where we were able to look at how much a particular shark had grown from one year to the next, had it even survived, etc., etc. In a first study, we investigated the presence of what we call a behavioral syndrome in juvenile lemon sharks. So I told you earlier, personality is when you can predict the behavior of an animal based on past observations of the same behavior. Well, a behavioral syndrome is when you can predict the behavior of an animal based on observations of other behavior. An example in shark would be that our hypothesis was that sharks that have high exploration scores have low sociability. If a shark is investing a lot of energy and a lot of time into exploring, it doesn't spend that much time socializing with other conspecifics, and vice versa. That's what a behavioral syndrome is. So we tested this hypothesis that very explorative shark would be not social in 2 different populations in Bimini, and we found that it was only true in one population called Sharkland, and only in certain particular years. And this is incredible because it suggests that certain environmental conditions promote behavioral syndromes and others do not. And depending on the conditions within a given year or a given habitat, you might find a behavioral syndrome, and sometimes you absolutely will not. This is really cool because this is something that we really don't know very much about. The other study that I would like to talk about looked at the link between personality, risk-taking, growth, and mortality. In ecology, there is a concept that's called life history trade-offs that says that the optimal value for a particular trait is reached at the expense of other traits. And one example in a shark, for example, if a baby lemon shark wants to grow fast, it's probably going to have to do it at the expense of its survival probabilities. It will have to focus on encountering food and search a lot to try to gather as much food as possible, and as a result, it might encounter more predators or be less vigilant. On the other hand, if a baby lemon shark would rather be safe, it's probably going to grow slower because it's going to invest a lot of energy into being vigilant and not so much into trying to find as much food as possible. That's what's called a growth survival trade-off. And these trade-offs have been hypothesized for many years to be linked to animal personality, but there's very little evidence that this is the case. So we tested whether exploration personality predicted how much risk a shark was willing to take in the wild, and we measured risk-taking as the distance the shark was willing to swim away from the mangrove, which is where it's the safest, and whether this exploration personality predicted growth in the future and survival probabilities. Once again, we did that in 2 populations of juvenile lemon sharks. The faster you grow, the less likely you are to survive when you are a juvenile lemon shark. This was true in both populations that we've investigated. In fact, this had been documented already by Joe Di Battista. What is surprising, however, is that our hypothesis that personality was linked to the growth and mortality trade-off was only true in one of the subpopulations called North Sound, and not at all in the other one, Sharkland. And this suggests once more that the emergence of animal personality and its consequences is highly dependent on environmental conditions. This indicates that studies in the wild, such as we've done in Bimini, are critical to our understanding of animal personality. This particular paper is still in review, and we'll be delighted to share it with you as soon as it comes out in the journal, so stay tuned for this one. I would like to take the opportunity of this video to thank every Shark Lab staff, volunteer or guest that has ever been involved in my animal personality project. It's a very big project and your contribution is super important to science, so I thank you all very much for your help. Have a great day. Standing by.